Howdy y'all, my name is Amelia Layton, and this is my debate response for PLS-361. I will be responding to Robert's post on debate 3, whether or not the United States was justified in dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And Robert has taken the stance that the United States was justified in dropping the bombs, and I disagree with his stance. I believe that the United States was not justified in dropping the bombs, and it was in fact a war crime that was committed by the United States during World War II. One of the points that Robert makes is that that Japan as a nation was guilty of multiple war crimes, and that mitigates the culpability of the United States when it comes to committing a war crime itself against Japan. He specifically cites the rape of Nanking, which involved mass murder of many citizens, I believe nearly 200,000. Don't get me wrong, obviously this is a horrid event in history that is a very clear and obvious war crime violation of human rights. The killing of multiple unarmed civilians is absolutely despicable. That does not justify the committing of a war crime against Japan in response. Just because Japan killed numerous civilians, which they had, that doesn't justify the United States using firebombs against civilians during the war during bombing campaigns, or B, dropping atomic bombs on non-military targets. Based off the traditional definition of terrorism, one of the key facets of terrorism is that you are attacking a civilian population that is not combat ready. You're attacking a target without combat capabilities. Now, while the dropping the atomic bomb isn't terrorism due to the fact that the United States is a state actor, and I personally don't believe in the existence of state terrorism, I believe that that is just an outright war crime. I believe that the United States targeting a civilian population clearly shows that this is not an acceptable use of military force. If the United States military were to have targeted military targets, such as bases, naval bases, what have you, that would have been a different story. But this was clearly an attack made to demoralize and break the will of the Japanese by striking fear into them that the war was no longer worth it due to the risk of civilian life. That it wasn't just the soldiers that were at risk, it was the civilians as well. Now, the most classic argument that's presented when it comes to the dropping of the atomic bombs was that this was something done in order to save lives of American soldiers. And while there is a degree of validity in the sense that obviously a good general would attempt to protect the lives of his soldiers best he could, that does not justify the killing of civilians. It'd be one thing, once again, if it were a military target, because that shows that they had the presence of mind to be protecting their soldiers by taking out hard targets that pose a significant threat should there be a proper invasion. But this was done preemptively against civilians. Once again, that's the key to the entire argument, is that this was not a strike against a military target. This was a strike against two cities full of civilians. By attacking civilians, this has just dropped the United States onto a level of clear war crime, because generally speaking, you look at the Geneva Conventions, one of the things in there is that you can't attack non-combatants. That includes medical staff and what have you. By bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you are striking against hospitals, schools, people just going about their everyday lives. They are not directly involved in the conflict. And while, yeah, it did achieve its goal, it did end the war a lot quicker. At what cost? The United States committed a war crime. Was it a necessary war crime? You can make an argument that it was. I personally don't think war crimes should be necessary. But the fact of the matter is that even though this was a move made in order to shorten the war by demoralizing the Japanese, it still violated multiple human rights and really should go down in history as one of the more shameful things we've done in a time of war as a nation, along with obviously firebombing Kyoto, because that's a very similar tactic of striking against civilians. So that is my response. Thank you very much.